Hello there. I'd like today to discuss a particular question, and that is it necessary to have the Buddha in Buddhism? That might seem a bit of a strange question, but I'll explain what I mean. So why is the Buddha essential to Buddhism, to practicing Buddhism? And I think some people would probably conclude that really he isn't. After all, we've got the Dharma, he gave us the Dharma. We can find out there's thousands of books about the Dharma. We can learn to meditate. So what need is there to really know much about the Buddha? So when we come to Buddhism, what attracts us very often is meditation. And then at some point we find out about the Dharma and maybe start practicing the 5 precepts. And maybe practicing some of the other teachings like the 3 lakshanas, noticing impermanence and seeing how our life is enhanced by letting go of expecting things to be how we want them to be. So it's practical, the Dharma is practical, and it offers a whole path, a whole way of life leading to enlightenment. But of course, most people aren't going to follow the path in that way, all the way to enlightenment. They're going to use Buddhism as, we could say, a self-help tool. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a very good self-help tool. So we have the Dharma, but we also have the Sangha, the spiritual community. And I think a lot of people find that very important too. So we have teachers that introduce us to the Dharma, but we also have peers that come along maybe at a similar time to us and who we discuss with, who get excited about the Dharma just as we do. So, all that works very well. But what part does the Buddha play in actually helping us move forward, you could say, helping us stay on the path? Obviously, the Buddha's story is pretty inspiring. He was born into a very wealthy home, and he was destined to be a leader, what's the equivalent of a king, really? So his father certainly wanted him to be of the warrior caste and to follow in his footsteps. And that's not what the Buddha did. So he left everything behind and he became a wanderer, a sadhu, like many people did in India at that time. And his example, some of the stories that we're very familiar with, can inspire us. And, that's all well and good. And that's maybe as far as we think the Buddha is useful for our practice or is going to help us. So we know that the Buddha is not a god. He's not a god, but then again, he's not quite an ordinary man. We do know that the Buddha, or it is said, I say we know, I should be careful about saying we know. It raises the whole question of how do we know. But we could say that the Buddha was a bodhisattva. And as you know, a bodhisattva is someone who devotes their life to helping all beings gain enlightenment. That's the aim, basically. They don't just want enlightenment for themselves. They don't have a selfish ounce in their body. They want all beings to gain enlightenment, and they work for that. And, there are many Jataka tales about the Buddha's previous lives where he did all sorts of deeds which saved other beings. He laid down his life in various ways. So he was a bodhisattva. And this was his last life as Gautama Buddha. So next we could say, does the Buddha want our respect? Well, no, he doesn't need our respect. Why would he? He's got no power over us. He's not a god. So we don't need to have respect from his side of things. But I would say that we do need him. And I would say that we need him not just for the stories of his example. And of course, when we first come to Buddhism, it's very good to familiarize ourselves with some of those stories, because we see in those stories his great compassion and his great wisdom. We see all the many ways that he taught, and he always taught appropriately. For some people, words weren't going to help. For other people, words were just what was needed. So he taught in very many different ways, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with some of those stories. So why do we need him beyond his example? Well, I would say that we need to revere. We all need to be able to look up to some being that in a way produces in us a sense of positive humility. It's a kind of respect that recognizes the gap between ourselves and how we would really deeply like to be. So I'm sure we've all had the experience of meeting somebody that we know is way beyond ourselves in terms of compassion and love and wisdom. And that's very important, because for each of us in our lives, we know that there must be more. We feel there must be more. We intuit there must be more than just a little humdrum life. And how do we move towards that? So the Buddha showed us lots of ways, and he's not here now. And yes, his example was extraordinary, but there's something else. There's something about the kind of respect that if we develop in ourselves opens us up. So what I'm saying really is that this sense of humility that we can have when we are faced with the gap, with the gulf between ourself and our, perhaps what you might call our ideal self, our perfected self, is something that we need to be in touch with if we're really going to pursue a Buddhist path. If we're going to go beyond just using it as a tool. So what I'm talking about here really is the difference between seeing Buddhism as a religion or as not as a religion. And that's a question that has been discussed by many people in many different ways. So, you can practice Buddhism as as a secular self-help tool, and you can practice Buddhism as a religion that goes way beyond that, just using it as a self-help tool. And from that perspective, from a perspective of a religious perspective, you could say that it's because Buddhism offers us a transcendental aspect that's beyond just being secular. And what is that? What is that transcendental aspect? Well, it's seeing beyond the material world. It's seeing that there is something beyond the material world that's very mysterious, and that any of us can't avoid, because we all are going to die at some point. Sooner or later we will all die. And at that point, only then will we find out, what is beyond this life. And as you know, the Buddha said there are many, many lives that are beyond this one. So we're on a path, you could say, of purifying ourselves, even perfecting ourselves and becoming Buddhas ourselves. We too can be Buddhas. But an essential part of becoming a Buddha is this sense of humility, of knowing where we are in relation to the Buddha, and therefore having the kind of respect that calls on the Buddha's help. And when we call on the Buddha, we're not calling on a man or a god, we're really calling on Buddhahood itself, on we're calling on, you could say, compassion. We're calling on metta that exists. You know, we don't make metta, we don't make compassion. There is metta, there is compassion, there is loving kindness. It's there, available to anybody that is willing to relax and open ourselves to reality, to how things really are. So this is all very mysterious, and today I've just opened the topic, and if anybody's got any comments on that, I'll be really pleased to hear them, and maybe I'll even say more on another video. So yeah, basically I'm arguing that the Buddha is essential not just as a good human being that found some very useful tools, but that he did something extraordinary and offered us the way to do something extraordinary as well. And that the gap, that recognizing the gap means that we do revere him. We can even worship him as being somebody who, well, is going to help us, can help us, if we have the right attitude, if we have the right sense of humility of where we are in relation to Buddhahood. So reflecting on the Buddha, calling on the Buddha, can be really worthwhile, can take us beyond just seeing the Buddha as a good example. So that's all for today. Bye for now.